Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome an accomplished author from Mumbai, India, Koral Dasgupta. Koral, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh.
Koral is an Indian author of 9 books, and she's also a digital publisher. She has just completed the 5 book Sati series, which is a retelling of the stories of the Panch Kanya from the Indian mythology. All her books are available in bookstores. She founded www.tellmeyourstory.biz, and given the amount of writing she's done, understandably, she's been recognized and felicitated several times. So, Coral, let me start with my first question. You have an incredibly diverse career spanning academic, nonfiction, relationship dramas, mythology, and digital publishing. What inspired you to become a storyteller?
Uh, Ashutosh, I was chucked out from everywhere else, so probably that is the only thing that I was left to do.
Mm-hmm.
When my son was very small, I was teaching in a college, and he had developed certain issues which required one of us, either me or my husband, to be available to him full time so that he responds and he gets used to respond to one of us, and take it from there. So I and my husband, we did our calculations and figured that his market value is more than mine.
Mm-hmm.
So I gave up the outside career, and then I tried to freelance. And I don't know whether you would be aware of the kind of stuff that happens with freelancers.
Mm-hmm.
Your checks bounce, your payments are delayed, sometimes denied. I'm a sensitive person. I felt very insulted, and I did not want to, be in that world.
Right.
I did not want to feel insulted for the talent that I believe I have.
Correct.
So I just thought that I will do something which may not give me as much money, but at least give me some satisfaction, because otherwise I was not getting either. That paid off, I guess.
Amazing. Amazing. And many of your books, Coral, are discussed in the context of gender studies, art, and eco-criticism. What drives you to explore these themes? And we will talk about your 5 book Sati series in much greater detail now.
Ashutosh, when I started writing Panch Kanya, those books are numbered from 5 to 9 of the 9 that I have written. I am not a typically religious person, or I am not a typically, I'm not a historian either. But I love literature, and I understand that literature is subject to interpretation. When I have read the Ramayana, Mahabharata, Gita, and many other texts multiple times, just because I was interested in the symbolism of various Indian gods and goddesses, Shiva, Kali. I come from Bengal, so Kali, Durga, the female varieties are very, very, that's wrong to say, female varieties. The female symbolisms are very, very interesting.
Absolutely.
So my idea of writing these was to explore the meanings of these stories, because I didn't believe the way the stories were told to me when I was a child.
Right.
I didn't believe that the stories written by ancient sages, who are supposed to be great philosophers, will try to look at one form of power and disregard the other form of power. Then there wouldn't be any goddess, right? There could be just gods. If that was the idea, if masculinity was supposed to be godly, then all the gods the anger of all the gods would not combine together to form a Durga. That means the feminine Shakti or power has a place of its own. And I wanted to really understand that well, because across centuries, females have been explained their femininity in different ways, and we have traveled through different centuries to explore ourselves, sometimes in a good way, sometimes in not so good way. So when I started writing Sati Series, one of the things that attracted me a lot was the role of nature in Indian mythology. You see, most of the gods and goddesses are extensions of nature.
Correct.
Indra, Agni, Vayu, Chandra, Surya, they're all nature. Which attests this simple thought that nature is more powerful than humans. And secondly, the stories I felt had rich philosophy behind them. And we were treating them as commercial fiction, which is taking away the purpose of the stories.
Right.
So that was something that I had in mind when I started writing.
Very, very interesting. Thank you for sharing this. So, Koral, let's now talk about your 5-book Sati series. And I've read reviews. I've not had a chance to read any of those books, but I will now. So let me start by asking you that the Panch Kanya, which is Ahilya, Kunti, Dropadi, Tara, and Mandodari, are often seen through the lens of patriarchy. How does your retelling challenge or reshape these narratives?
So, Ashutosh, my books write on the back cover. It says that the stories are written with feminist consciousness, but let me tell you that is not true. I am a storyteller. I didn't have any agenda, not even women's agenda.
Absolutely.
I was only telling the story, but since I decided to tell the stories as a first person's narrative of the titular women, there were a lot of things that were coming out because I am a woman too, and I would probably, given if placed in that situation when I am becoming their voice, I put myself in that particular flow, and then I tell the story, then I find the voice. So a lot of pains and tribulations of my life have made way through it. A lot of disbelief and denial that I have gone through in my life, battled with, all those have found space. But I'll tell you one interesting feedback that I often receive. So everybody, not just men, not just women, but men also, we pick up our fights, right? We don't necessarily fight everything. And we talk about certain things. We just let go of certain things. We don't necessarily react. But then we are always thinking, whatever happens, there is a reaction in the mind which we may or may not allow to go out to the world. So a lot of people have said that, the girls are thinking and they're thinking so strong. That's quite feminist. So I was quite fascinated that, okay, if the girl thinks, then she's a feminist. Point taken. But in my storytelling, it was not a conscious decision that I had taken, but that is how it came out.
Right.
More than the women, Ashutosh, I have tried to rebuild the men's narrative, which people haven't understood while reading the stories. But I truly believe that we have to create role models for men. Women are great. Women are okay. They have failures, they have success. But if you want women's liberation, you have to liberate the man.
Correct.
Because they are also a victim of patriarchy. They have also been pushed to a corner. They have also been told, be macho, be dominating, be intimidating. You release the man from that prison and everybody in the society will be free. So if the idea of your hero, as it had come across in films and books, is the man who dominates, the man who is in charge every time, the man who is supposed to protect. Nobody can protect. They can only support.
Correct.
And when you look at the man from that perspective, you get to see the man's vulnerability as well. You get to see if the man is a good-natured person who has made mistakes, who has made blunders, and he is brought to that situation where he is in that frame of mind to accept that blunder.
Right.
You actually heal a lot in that man, and a lot heals around him because of that.
Well said.
I have actually, my stories, of course, disclose the stories of women as seen from their perspective, but actually they create the heroes. They are telling, the stories are telling, revealing the kind of men that women actually loved and why they loved.
Amazing. Thank you. So, Koral, let's now talk about these five Panch Kanyas. Each of them have amazing stories. And let me start by asking you about Ahilya. Ahilya is often defined by her curse. How does retelling redefine her agency and choices?
So, as I was saying, that there's a lot of philosophical interpretations that must be applied to these, and those philosophy got stripped out because most of these original stories were written in Sanskrit, and as we brought it to colloquial language, which was easier, we tried to make the stories also easier. Why go into the depth and understand the philosophy? Let's just stick to the core narrative that comes across. And so when growing up, I was growing up in 80s, and I heard that from Ahilya's story, that whatever, if a woman is wrong, then whoever is at fault, be it a man or the woman will be punished. I have grown up with that learning. And at some point of time, when I go back to mythology to explore it more neutrally, because I have adulted like that, and I have refused to believe in certain things that my elders told me. That is when I try to get into the philosophy, and I understand that Indra, the word Indra, could come from, I wouldn't say comes from, I would say it could come from another word called Indriya, which means your senses.
Correct.
So if I apply Indra in that context, that Indra is actually your desire, the god of desire, the god of illusions, that is created by your senses, then you probably realize that Ahilya did not necessarily cheat with another entity. Ahilya had aroused certain emotions, certain sensibilities in a man who had chosen austerity. And with whatever Ahilya had done, Ahilya was absolutely right in her place as the wife. But Maharishi Gautama, had chosen something else for himself.
Correct.
And that is what infuriated him, that he had picked up another direction. Why did she distract me? So they both were probably right in their own way, in their own spaces, the way they looked at, and Gautam was he had more agency to curse, which he did. But as philosophy says that every curse is a blessing and every blessing is a curse. Gautam turned Ahilya into a rock. There are two ways of looking at it. One is, if I suddenly put an allegation on you that, Ashutosh, this is what you have done to me, your first reaction will be that shock, a patthar banjan. You will turn into a rock. That is the effect of a shock. That happens with everybody. We all are Ahilya. We all have had those situations in our life when unfair allegations have turned us into a rock and we didn't know how to react. The second explanation, which is the philosophy of mythology, is that when you are turned into a rock, you cannot emote. You cannot make use of your senses, but you can observe. You are not being able to express, but you are observing. And you are learning from everything that is happening around. The rest of the restlessness within you has been completely tamed, and only that aspect of yours is alive and active. This is what Gautam wanted for himself.
Right.
So with the curse, Gautam had given everything of his life to Ahilya, and he has to start from scratch.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Thank you. The next person is Kunti. And, most people who have read the Mahabharata must have heard of Kunti. She's a fascinating figure torn between duty and motherhood. What in aspects of her personality intrigued you the most?
Kunti was, I have reasons to say that Kunti was more fond of Arjun than anybody else.
Absolutely.
Though, when it came to stories where she had to choose her sons, she always chose Yudhishthir and Nakula, because Nakula was Madri's elder and Yudhishthir was her elder.
Yeah.
But I would have reasons to say that Arjun was her favorite, because Kunti's actual name was Pritha. When she was adopted by Kunti Bhojan, she was named Kunti, but her actual name was Pritha. Kunti's sons were called Kauntya, Pandu's sons were called Pandav.
Yes.
Only one son is called Partha. So that aspect of affection, I am deriving it from there, that affection, motherly affection, only one son had, and that was Arjun. And I would say that there were reasons for it. Kunti was a Kshatriya, and a Kshatriya woman is very clear about her political detailing because she is born and brought up into that. She is very clear about she has a lot of clarity about politics, about economics, about warfare. She has grown up in that situation. So it's obvious that she would want her child to be the greatest warrior and have great understanding of politics. Now, if you see, Arjun was the central character in the Pandava. Everything Arjun had earned, but it went to Yudhishthir, being the elder brother. But everything that Yudhishthir earned, Yudhishthir had, from the kingdom to the wife to everything, it was actually Arjun's doing. And so I would have, and Arjun was Indraputra. So I would say that a lot of people actually say that, do you see Kunti as a manipulative person? And I don't. I see her as a very ambitious person. She was so ambitious that being a princess of Earth, she wanted to engage with the king of gods to have a child who would be the greatest hero of Mahabharata.
Right.
If you look at it philosophically, that is her ambition, because she is looking at the future, that how the future will look and in whose hands, or who is the successor, the actual successor. You, as a leader, you will always have an eye towards your future, and this is Kunti. So,
very interesting.
Too many people say that Kunti is very manipulative and all that. Kunti wasn't manipulative just because she's a woman.
Fascinating.
Ambition got, misconstrued.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the third person, which is Draupadi. Draupadi is known for her resilience and her fiery spirit. What leadership lessons can modern women draw from Draupadi's story?
A lot, Ashutosh. One is Draupadi. We have remembered Draupadi's presence in that Hastinapur court, and whatever happened thereafter is so spoken about and so discussed that we have forgotten Draupadi's original identity. That who was she other than? She has always been portrayed as a woman with open hair, very angry. She was not a mad woman. Draupadi's hospitality was famous all over. People from far off places, sages and kings, they came to receive her hospitality. She was a great cook. She really loved to attend people. That aspect of her personality has been completely forgotten. But when everything happens for a purpose, and that is not just in mythology, in every person's life, whenever you are being subjected to certain things that you are uncomfortable about, that is basically an opportunity for you to change something there if you can. And you are given multiple opportunities across your life. You pick up where you are willing to make that change. And Draupadi chose hers. There was a long period of time when she kept that anger alive. She didn't let it subside. The reason was, it was not a personal war. It was not just Dropadi. It was about the queen of Hastinapur. The law and order of Hastinapur court was molested. And Dropadi was very clear about that. She never believed that she was molested. She always believed that the court of law was molested.
Correct.
The chairs were molested. And
well said.
that is something that, just takes me out. I mean, I'm just fascinated about it. But today, if all men and women have this much clarity that molestation or rape is not the molestation or any kind of shame for the woman, but it is the shame of the political system, the administration, the people in charge who have failed to maintain the law and order of that particular region. A lot would change. Why? I mean, shame the person who has done the crime and not the victim. Our Mahabharata is telling us that we have remembered the event, not the villain.
Very well said. Let's now talk about the fourth and fifth together, which is Tara and Mandodari. And they are often overshadowed by their powerful husbands, Bali and Ravan. How do you bring their voices to the forefront?
Mandodari really took me time because I am completely convinced that Ravan was a great singer. If Indian mythology is considering him as a great villain, then he definitely is. But Mandodari was not just afraid of him. If she was afraid of him, she wouldn't have advised him. Mandodari was in love with him. And I can be afraid of an abusive man. I wouldn't be in love with an abusive man. I mean, I'm not stupid. Right? So, same it was with Mandodari, which meant that the guy was doing something right as a husband. And Mandodari's narrative was actually, in the first three, Ahilya, Kunti, Dropadi, Indra came up as a hero. In Mandodari's narrative, Indra was the villain. And Ravan was the hero.
Yeah.
Because the wife is telling the story and she is trying to tell the story behind the making of the villain. That why he is like what he is. Also, something that I observed was when Ravan defeated Kuber and got his hand on Lanka. Lanka was a very affluent country. It was not a beautifully constructed country. It was said to be affluent. Mandodari was the daughter of Maya, who had later constructed the Indraprastha.
Yeah.
So I have reasons to believe that Mandodari had inherited everybody is inheriting the father's skills, right? So it could be that Mandodari was the architect of Lanka, who has rebuilt it, and I had taken the story from there.
Amazing.
About Tara, which is the story of Bali and Sugriv, I had a lot of problem. All the while that I had read Ramayana, I had a lot of problem with Rama killing Bali from behind the bush. I always felt that there has to be something more to this. Because there are lots of alternate stories, as in why Ram had to do that. This curse, that, boon, etc., etc. But if Rama was the god, why would he have to do that? Beaches are not bothered.
Yeah.
So I was very uncomfortable with that. And I have always heard of Bali as a villain. I refused. And when I looked at this story, I was really, really taken by the story of Bali because I felt that this Bali was not a villain. Bali was a beautiful hero. Bali. Now, this is the monkey world where animals are far simpler than humans. They have their own ethical system. They're sweeter. They're funnier. And so was Bali and Sugriv. They were the thickest of friends, which usually mythological narratives doesn't show. They were the thickest of friends. And with time, something happened, which turned Bali into a completely different character. What we have missed about Bali's story is that Bali fought two very difficult demons. One was Dunduvi and the other was Mayavi. Now you just think, Ashutosh, a demon who is called Mayavi by mythology cannot be a normal demon, right?
Correct.
We all come across this Mayavi. We are born as sweet creatures who are very open and flexible. And then certain trauma comes into our life, and that is Mayavi. And fighting that trauma, the person that emerges is just a shadow of the earlier person. That person gives up a lot of abilities, the ability to love, the ability to forgive, the ability to be friendly,
Right.
the ability to look at a person neutrally without judgment. The same happened with Bali. And Tara was the one who was completely in sync with everything that was happening because she was the girl of the wild.
Yeah.
And between Bali and Sugriv, there was a very simple conflict of ideologies. Bali believed in animal wisdom. He was happy being an animal. And Sugriv was waiting to be tamed by the humans. He believed in human superiority.
Correct.
That was the conflict. And Tara was observing all of it.
Fascinating. Fascinating. So I have time for two more questions for you. And I'm going to stay only with the Sati series. The Sati series, Koral, spans 5 books over several years. How did your perspective or writing style evolve throughout your journey?
Ashutosh, I have battled different kinds of emotions while writing these because you can understand when one book does well, you have that trigger that next should be grander. Not only in terms of writing style, but also in terms of how the kind of world that you want your readers to experience.
Yeah.
And mythology, I mean, for me, mythology is grander than a Sanjay Leela Bhansali set, you know. So I wanted to experiment with colors, with sound, and I really, really pushed myself. There were times when I was traveling, and I would just quietly sit by the river, close my eyes, try to understand the sound of the river, the way it's happening. That if I can, write in a way where the person will be able to hear the sound of the river when they are reading. So I don't know whether I have been able to do that, but I tried.
Amazing.
Nature comes across very strongly in these narratives, and I enjoyed doing that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the author in you. That's amazing. And my last question for you, Koral. If you were to summarize the core message of your 5-book Sati series, what would it be?
Ashutosh, while writing these books has been very exhausting because there was a lot of hard work from my end, from my editor's end. But it has been spiritually very, very elevating.
Correct.
And I have personally learned that I don't need to be as afraid as I was used to be earlier. I get to see a lot of things that I didn't see earlier. I get to see a lot of discrimination. And, my husband, my family, my mother, they are not the villains in my life. They are also the products of a certain time period who have grown up learning certain things. They have grown up with certain conditionings, which can't go overnight. But when I point those out, I probably make things better for another generation when I talk to my son about those. That, I think, is something that is happening at my home. I hope the future turns out to be as I'm telling you. Secondly, as I was saying, that my fears have diminished immensely. I know how to deal with everything that I'm afraid about.
Absolutely. And on that note, and your incredible message, which is, there is absolutely no need to be afraid when you think of the perspectives that you have shared about Ahilya, Kunti, Dropadi, Tara, and Mandodari. Thank you, Koral, for speaking to me about your own journey. Thank you for speaking to me about the 5-book Sati series. I just loved how easily you were able to put such an incredible perspective for all the 5, protagonists in your 5 books. I'm sure a lot of our viewers and listeners will love to read these books, understand your perspectives much greater. I could just continue listening to the amount of knowledge you have, but unfortunately, I'm running out of time. Maybe I'll reach out to you again for another conversation in a few months from now. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh. It was wonderful talking to you, and you are doing a great job. I have heard your podcasts. So
thank you.
I hope more and more listeners listen to the learnings that you are putting across.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast. platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.